Hi, good day, everyone. So happy that you're here because whether you're a mom, dad, grandparent, or someone who is working alongside a child going through school right now, this session is going to be informative. And so I thank you for showing up. Of course, I am Alina Lewis, and I'm the education consultant at VLC. And we are a local education support center, a literacy center based in Gasparilla. We work closely with families, teachers, and the schools to support children's learning, especially in reading, writing, and the foundational skills. Now, today's session is called Empowering Success, Navigating New Academic Levels in Trinidad and Tobago. And really, that's what we're here to do. I'm here to share some tools, share some insights, and some peace of mind as you help your child to be able to transition into secondary school and transition through secondary school and beyond. Yeah? So we know that whenever we're getting ready for a new academic level, this move comes with a lot of routines that are going to be needed. Oftentimes there's a sense of academic pressure that are experienced by some and some social changes. But don't worry, we're going to be breaking down in this particular conversation what to expect, how to support your child at home, and what resources are available. So, at VLC, we believe that parents are powerful partners in learning, and your involvement makes a whole heap of a difference. Get comfortable, grab a notebook. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But we're going to get started. So I'll get started by sharing my screen. So allow me a minute. Let me just get my screen shared. And then we're gonna jump in. Yeah? Great. So we know we're talking through empowering success, navigating new academic levels in Trinidad and Tobago. Why do we call it this? Because that's exactly what we want to do. We want to recognize that it's not just about saying, oh, my child is going to a new school or my child is going to a new class. But we want to recognize the importance of saying we need to be intentional about that experience. Your child is going into a new class. There's a level of intentionality that is needed in order to make sure they're not just passing through the academic year, but they are able to progress from one level to another. They're able to overcome challenges, and they're able to say, this is now what I can do better. These are the new skills. And for some kids, it comes like a bit naturally and seamlessly, and that's great. But for the kids for whom it doesn't come as naturally or as seamlessly, that's okay. What I want to emphasize is that by being intentional, by being strategic, by planning, we can make a difference with how our kids experience their learning at each new academic level. So, of course, I mentioned VLC, or Voronoi Literacy Center. We are a literacy center based in Gasparilla, Trinidad, and our focus is to enhance literacy and academic success for students of all ages. So we support kids from age 4 through our Infant Bridge program, and we support kids right up through secondary school, and we have adult literacy programs as well. We do this through our after-school programs where we do a lot of work in math, English, creative writing. We also have our homework club programs and so on. We have full-time programs that through our Department for Homeschool Education, where we're able to provide tailored support for students who, for one reason or another, are not able to attend school in a traditional way. Those parents can still find a structured, supportive experience and a structured, supportive service where they could have the needs of their child determined, they could have a sense of direction, and ensure their child continues through the journey regardless of the challenges faced, whether it's medical or otherwise. Yeah, we offer specialized literacy programs at VLC where we're tailoring it, and everything at VLC does is tailored to the individual needs of students. So even for instance, we have our Literacy Week, our back to school literacy program that's starting actually this coming Monday. And I was sharing with a parent, no, send them with their books. You bought the books for September, let them come with their books. And what we're going to do is start introducing their phonics, introducing the new words, introducing what they need to know at the new level. So when they get back out to school in September, they're going to be in such a better place And so, yeah, definitely, that one-on-one is a key part of the fabric of who we are and what we do and how we do what we do at VLC. We offer workshops and seminars similar to these. We do it both virtually and we do in-person sessions, both parenting sessions with like school PTA bodies. We do teacher training sessions with teachers at schools, and we work with NGOs and other community groups. So it's really exciting. It's really an exciting time at VLC. And our approach, I can't emphasize enough, is personalized instruction, interactive learning, and community engagement. Because what do we want to do? We want to make sure we're strengthening literacy skills and fostering lifelong academic growth. And so the topics we're going to be discussing this morning is really centered around that, strengthening your ability as a parent to be able to support your child's literacy skills development and make sure that that academic growth that should be taking place over the next 12 months is going to be like a smooth of an experience. And even if there are challenges, you're going to be equipped with some good tips that will help you know how to navigate. Yeah. So we're going to be talking through understanding the academic transitions. We're going to be talking about social and communication strategies, academic support strategies, behavioral strategies, and of course, Q&A, because we do have some questions that came in before. So Q&A and closing remarks. Yeah. So let's jump in, guys. We're starting off with a quote. And our quote says that the collaboration between parents and educators is essential for the success of students. And so we're starting off with an understanding that relationship is important. And even as you guys, mummies, daddies, you get ready to get your kids back out for the academic year, I really want to encourage you to be intentional about building positive relationships with your child's schools and your child's teachers. And I don't mean bombard them, but I mean let's have an understanding that when we have positive relationships, the collaboration between the parents and the educators, the parents and the schools means as the educators, they get to better understand the needs of your child, and they get to understand how they could support you in a different way. And you get to understand your school's system and understand how you can fit into that and navigate through it seamlessly. So we're starting off saying relationship is important, and we want to be able to foster positive relationship as far as we can to make sure that our children are able to access the necessary resources and are able to have everything that they need in order to take it from one level to another. When we begin thinking about the transition from primary to secondary that happens through the SEA exam, we're recognizing in this moment that that is a significant shift, because we're moving from this familiar primary math, grammar, creative writing. There's a certain way everything was structured and so on. So then there's this diverse, much larger in many instances, secondary environment. So that's a shift that needs to take place. You know, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have an average of over 19,000 students that transition annually with the SE exams. And it's important for you as parents to recognize that this brings new demands. And new demands means that your kids, they move from this heavy focus on math, grammar, creative writing, because they have this exam to write, and now they have multiple subjects. Most secondary students do an average of about 12 or 13 subjects. So we're shifting from 3 to 12 or 13. You know, we're moving from one main teacher to multiple teachers. We're moving from an exclusive, for many students, an exclusive focus on math, grammar, creative writing. So we have to juggle homework for 13 subjects. So it's a big transition that our kids have to make. And we want to recognize that as exciting as it is for them to have that transition, equally, they need more support. Yeah? And that support means you want to understand what is now required of them, where they were at when they started the journey to this new secondary life, and of course, what's the ultimate goal? And we're going to talk more about goals later in this session, yeah? But I do want to emphasize, moms and dads, that new demands, the demands are new. And even if you have kids that are transitioning, entering that CSEC level, there are new demands. Now, mind you, they might be scaling down from maybe 12, 13 to anywhere between 5 to 9 subjects, depending on like what school that they're in. But the demands are huge because guess what? They're moving into a space where their analytical skills and all of this is now going to be required of them to apply to a different level. And so they need to now move from, okay, yeah, mommy, I revised my work. We're moving way past that once we get to CXC, yeah? And now we're going past, I revise, I learn to definition to what extent do you understand it? To what extent are you able to analyze it? To what extent are you able to compare and contrast? And all of these other skills, they have to be able to go so much deeper in being able to use it and being able to get ready to respond to those CSET practice questions as they head into Form 5. And again, it means support is needed. So we want to recognize that we have larger student bodies. A lot of times when you make these transitions, they have a lot of new peer groups that they have to learn how to navigate. And of course, when we think about parental support, there is increased independence expected, but critical support from you, the moms and dads, or those who are supporting them, it still remains. Oftentimes, in practice, I've observed that parents remain energized through the primary process. And when their kids hit secondary level, they go hands off. And I really want to encourage parents of secondary students to recognize your children still need you. Yes, they're growing and they're getting independent. They want to do things on their own. And we have all of the relational things that come up, but it doesn't change the fact that they need you. They still need your support. They still need you to encourage them. They still need you to coordinate things for them. They still need those check-ins because they're learning, they're still growing mentally, emotionally, they're still developing. Please, parents of secondary students, I really encourage you. They still need you, and a lot of times parents go hands off and they probably start to check in closer to Form 5. I really want to encourage all parents. Stay highly in tune with your children all through the secondary level, because this way you're going to be able to pick up if there's a gap, if there's a challenge somewhere, did something go wrong, you're going to be able to pick up on it. And you don't want to wait until you're probably a year out from a major exam or a couple months out then to realize, oh my gosh, look at what's going on with my child. No, if we stay in tune, we stay hands-on with our kids throughout the secondary years, the way we do with our kids when they're at the primary level, a lot of our kids would have a significantly, in a positive way, a very different experience. So that's a huge encouragement I want to leave with parents today, yeah? So let's talk about key challenges. Some major challenges that students face in this transition, and you as a parent, you should know about is one, that curriculum shift. So oftentimes, as I mentioned earlier, we're moving from this math, grammar, creative writing to you have to do this different scope of work, different scope of subject combinations. Because once we move from the primary to the secondary, really we're taking them on this 5-year transition that says we're getting you CXC aligned. Because that's the end goal, yeah? CXC alignment. And so there's a curriculum shift that happens, which means that we need to have a different sort of workload management. Many children have up to 5 to 7 subjects with daily homework averaging at about 1 to 2 hours if they're doing all of it. That requires some management because again, if you're coming from primary to secondary, you're moving from just some math or just some grammar to, I have history, I have geography, I have art, I have literature, I have Spanish, I have a French, it's a lot. And so helping your children understand how to manage their workload is important. And here, when we talk about managing workload, we're not just talking about the completion of homework. Managing workload means managing starting with the understanding that I have all of these subjects to get done, one. Secondly, managing the workload, meaning I'm managing my understanding that I have homework associated with this. Managing my workload means I'm managing the understanding I may have projects to do. Managing my workload means understanding that I have to revise for all of these subjects. And last but certainly not least, that I would mention in this moment, managing workload means positioning yourself to have the information make sense. Yeah, being able to use the information, being able to interact with the information such that you're able to do something with it, you're able to apply it, hopefully both in real life and not only in the exam room. Yeah, students also face challenges as it pertains to teaching styles. It's not SCA, nobody's zooming down on them. They're not babies anymore, so even the teachers of the C-sex students are not necessarily hovering over them and prodding them to get their work done. No, there's this understanding that, hey, you are of age, you're growing up, you are going to be needing to stand on your own. And so oftentimes in schools, in public schools and so on, there's less individualized attention happening and more lecture-based delivery. Why is this important? This is important to understand because it means that for students to be successful, there needs to be an intentionality that says, I'm not going to pay attention to what's going on, but I need to have developed or be developing my note-taking skills in order to make sure that I can do a good job with understanding and recording what is being taught. And so these are points of encouragement, not just go to school, not just go to school and learn, but now as parents, you have to be encouraging your child or checking in, having conversations that says, okay, when you get to class, what happens? Does your teacher write the note on the board? Does your teacher guide you to your textbook? How do you remember what your teacher did? And start creating protocols for your children, encouraging them to have structure about how they manage their learning experiences within the classroom. So sometimes that might mean encouraging your child, okay, if your teacher says, turn in your social studies textbook to page 25, you should make a note of that somewhere so that when you go home in the evening or 2 days later, you want to revise that, you could remember that your teacher went to page 25, because oftentimes they say, oh, I don't remember, they just do something. No, there's a sense of accountability and responsibility that our children can take that says, I'm going to make a point of this, I'm going to make a note of this, so therefore I empower myself to be able to do a better job when I have to revise or do homework. I can be accountable for what's happening in school. And these are things as parents you can teach your kids, or you can encourage your kids to do as part of an accountability practice that says, this is how I make sure I stay on top of my work and my process. Yeah? Good. Of course, let's not forget the social adjustment that's required. For many, moving from primary school to secondary school means navigating a larger school, new friendships, potential bullying. How do we manage those social interactions? And this is why conversations are important. And I was really encouraging earlier when I said parents of secondary students, I really encourage you, stay in tune and stay in touch with your kids and what's going on with them. Don't just say, oh, they're big now. No, they need you. And this is part of how they need you, because friendships get a lot more complex than it was. The experience of friendships, they get a lot more complex than how it was at the primary level. And, how we manage those social relationships, both the positive and negative experiences, sometimes you need being guided through the mental, emotional response to that. And conversations with you, the parent, how to manage it well is important. Same thing with the stress, where some children feel a pressure to perform, they have a fear of failure, they're in that critical teen year where they have identity formation, they're questioning who they are and all of the things. They need you. And so I really encourage you, moms and dad, continue to make yourself available to your kids so that way you could stay in tune, not just academically, not just with their grades, but with all that they are, with the whole child. Yeah? So we want to definitely keep those things in mind. And of course, creating a supportive environment is also critical. And I'm sure you've heard so much of this before, but they all remain true. Make sure you have a dedicated study space, somewhere that is quiet, well lit, free from distractions, or have a system in your home that minimizes distraction during certain times. Yeah, so some kids have study rooms, some kids have study spaces within their bedrooms, some kids work from the living room. That's where the table is because mommy or daddy want to see what's going on. But because they're working in that space, and as a family, we have to remember, oh, we can't be blasting TV maybe during a certain time because homework or study is being done. So we want to keep that in mind as a family. How do we support? Having consistent routines, finding schedules to have, when I say fixed times for homework, I mean an understanding of how it's going to be done. Our schedules are diverse, and so a fixed time doesn't have to mean one day at 5 o'clock or every day at 5 o'clock, but it certainly means we have an understanding on these days and times. This is how we get it done. So once you have a consistency, you have a schedule, and don't be afraid to write it down. It means there could be accountability and we could have that check-in. Yeah, let's keep in mind healthy habits, making sure we're getting enough sleep. So many teens are now, they're on their phone until the wee hours of the morning. How are they going to focus when they go to school? And we say, oh, they're teenagers, but the reality is it's not a healthy habit. So as a parent, you get to decide, how am I going to handle this? Am I just going to leave it and let it be? Or am I going to, put some protocols in place to make sure it's addressed, whether maybe at night there's a turn-in time for the phone? Because, many parents, while they're sleeping away, their kids are up just on a phone, scrolling 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And then we wonder why we're not getting results, why they're not focused, why they can't remember. They're not sleeping enough. They're tired. Their minds are tired. So maybe having, everybody turning their phone at X time every night to make sure we take away the temptation and we help them to be able to recognize the importance of consistent routine and wise decision making. And let's not forget a balanced diet, because a balanced diet supports cognition. A balanced diet helps the brain to function differently. Yeah, let's manage technology, set some screen time, manage social media time, because they do need to have the time for the other things, the homework, your revision, and building relationships. Of course, you're talking about the whole child. Building relationships, time off devices, spending time with family. Let's not forget family is important, yeah? And so we want to be able to, of course, have open communication. So as they go through rough times, things pop up, they have the freedom to know they could come to you to talk to you no matter what, that you're going to be there. And we want to make sure we're building in them that confidence, yeah? So creating a supportive home environment means not just a home environment to say, yeah, they have a space to do homework. No, we want to make sure we're going way beyond that. And we want to make sure that beyond having a dedicated space, we're encouraging consistent routines, healthy habits, open communication, and technology management. Yeah? Excellent. So we talk about communication and social interactions. So here are some quick tips I want to go through with social and behavioral strategies. At home, encourage structured play dates, liming time, whatever you want to call it. So that way, your children, they just don't only do random things, but they also have a structured understanding to know we have a time and a place and for everything. And it helps you as a parent to stay integrated in their lives as opposed to they just always go off on their own. It's great when as a parent you can continue to be integrated in the life of your child. It helps you to navigate, to guide them, to encourage them with wise decision making. Use role-playing games to practice interactions. So if this happens at school, what you'll do, how you'll handle it, act it out, talk it out, because it helps that before they get into a situation at school or so, because they're accustomed talking through these things with you, they have this idea in their mind how they could or should respond. So it minimizes or it reduces the instances of them flying off the handle and getting into problems. Because from in advance, you are having these conversations, and so they have these ideas in their minds. I don't want to get on like that. I could do it like this. I don't have to act out like that. I could respond like this. And role playing games, conversations within the home, just family time. You're cooking, you're talking, you're washing, you're talking. Those times allow for moments for you to talk through things and be able to help them figure out how to have appropriate responses in social situations. And of course, let's not forget model, be the example, model appropriate social behaviors. So because they see you being that example, it's easier for them to think and know what to do and know how to handle it. Yeah. And of course, at school, encourage them with the use of social stories to guide appropriate interactions, structure, encourage them to, be structured in how they choose their friends, how they choose to use their time, how they work with their study partners if they have a study buddy system. Encourage them to have visual supports that would enhance the way that they communicate, and of course, taking turns so that everyone isn't just allowing themselves to be aggravated when they can't have their way. And these are things you could encourage them to embody while they are at school. With academic strategies, of course, we can't emphasize enough that quiet, distraction-free homework space, breaking down tasks and helping your children, your teens, learn how to break down tasks into smaller steps with clear instructions helps, and I'll tell you why. Because oftentimes they have work to do and it seems insurmountable, it seems impossible. And so many teens, they never had the modeling of how to take a large major task and break it down. And so they just get discouraged and they feel like giving up. But when as parents, we can position ourselves to encourage them and teach them how to break down tasks into smaller steps, it means whether they're at home or at school, it's an ability they now have, and they're able to stay motivated even when an assignment stays tough. So that's a quick little tip you could think about as well. Don't be afraid to use timers or visual schedules. Don't just talk through what the timetable for the week should look like. Write it out, type it up, print it out, draw it out, whatever. Put it up on a wall, put it up on the refrigerator, on the wardrobe, whatever. Have a visual schedule, because again, it acts like this reminders. And if your child is techie, no problem, then use your calendar on your phone and plug it in with reminders. So that way it's like, oh, you get this reminder, you have this visual representation or notification system in case of a calendar, a digital calendar that says, oh, this is what I have. And it's starting in 15 minutes or in 5 minutes. I need to transition and do that, because it helps us stay on task. And of course, let's not take for granted the value of hands-on learning activities related to schoolwork. Because when we take our schoolwork and we make it relative to real life, everyday life, it makes learning that much more impactful. Yeah. So when they're able to now go to school and break down their tasks into smaller, manageable steps, it means it's now easier for them to say, I know I can do that. They stay motivated, they stay on task. When they have those visual schedules, make sure they have their school timetable written out. Have a checklist that says, before school, this is what I have to do. Maybe before class starts, this is what I have to do, especially for Form 1s. Visual checklists can be really good for helping them learn how to keep themselves on task, because they may not have as much doting or people hovering over them to make sure they do what they're supposed to do. So checklists can be like a great help for them to have at school. Get your textbook, get your stationery, get your notebook, whatever. Have checklists for them to have to reference, yeah? Of course, reinforcing strengths and interests, encourage them to explore their strength, your child is naturally athletic, encourage them to participate in the school events. Your child loves drama and expression, encourage them to join the drama club. Reinforce their strengths and interests to keep them interested and to keep them motivated. And of course, when necessary, encourage them to request extra time. If a teacher say, okay, guys, we're going to finish in 5 minutes, then communicating with that teacher, say, Miss, can I have 1 more minute to finish a sentence? Little things like that make a difference because it keeps our children motivated, even within the classroom. When mommy, daddy, granny is not around to build them up, they can learn to build up themselves. And that's what we want for our children, whether they're transitioning into Form 1, Form 4, or any other level in between. We want to make sure that they're learning to have the mentality, the emotional resilience, and the strategies to keep themselves motivated, pushing through, and learning well throughout the academic year. Behaviorally, we want to, of course, use positive reinforcement for good behaviors. We talked about establishing those consistent daily routines, super important, and teaching and practicing calming techniques. That's a really nice one. And calming techniques isn't because necessarily somebody got them angry. Calming techniques a lot of times are, gosh, I have this assignment and I'm feeling overwhelmed. I have this task to do and I'm feeling overwhelmed. And taking time to teach your kids calming techniques mean they're able to get it together, they're able to get their minds and their feelings in check, and they're able to continue along the journey. And that's really, really, really important. Yeah? Excellent. So remember, create goals for your children. Make sure when you create a goal, you're not just saying, I want my child to do better, or I want my child to settle well in school. No, let's make those goals smart. Make sure you're being specific. Identify exactly what you want to achieve. Make sure you're able to determine how you're going to track that progress. Make sure you determine what an action plan needed to reach that goal. Make sure the goal that you're setting is in alignment with what they need to be done, so it's relevant. And make sure you put some timestamps on that, establish some milestones so that you could check in and make sure you're progressing. You do not have to wait until the end of an academic year to realize it didn't go well. And that goes across the board, no matter what. You do not have to wait until the end of an academic year to know, we're having some challenges. No, you can figure that out way before. And creating SMART goals helps with that, because at each stage, we know specifically what are the things we're looking for. We have a measurement. We know this grade needs to go by 20%, or this grade needs to go by 10%, whatever the case may be. We build it out so that it's attainable, where we say, okay, this is where you're at. Ultimately, that is where we want you to be. This is how we're going to walk towards it over the course of the year. Make your goals SMART, and it helps it to be experienced as more manageable. And of course, children stay motivated. So you're realizing that I'm using that word motivated a lot, right, guys? We want to make sure our kids stay motivated, encourage positive mindset, because when they have these, you don't have to force them to want to do this necessary thing called the experience of learning. They're going to want to do it on their own. They're going to be more willing. They're going to be more open. Yeah? So I know we have 3 questions that came in that I want to address real quick, because I know everyone, we're coming and going. So we're not going to stretch out the session. One of the first questions that came in was, how do I get my child to complete homework? Right? The quick tip on completing homework, I want to start off with accountability, and then I want to touch on resources. So 1, being able to identify what the homework is first and foremost critical. But then secondly, making sure you have resources, meaning you make sure the student has their textbook, making sure they have their notes from school, and making sure they understand that doing homework isn't just answering questions from the top of your head, especially if they're transitioning into secondary, or especially if they're transitioning into CSEC mode. It means that we want them to understand that a more targeted response is needed. So it means that completing homework means I don't just write because I think I remember. No. When you have homework, you go back into your textbook, you reread the sections about the topic that the homework is about, you go back into your notebook from school, you reread the teacher's notes, and then based on that understanding, then you answer questions. Yeah. And the likelihood of those questions being, or those answers, sorry, being correct is way higher. Yeah. So that's one quick tip. And the second question that came in asked, how do I get my child to revise effectively? The quick tip for that is have an outline of what your child is required to know, so that way you can benchmark it. So oftentimes when parents talk about their child not revising effectively, that usually comes off of the heel of they didn't do good in an exam, they didn't do well. So if it is you have an outline that says this is what my child is supposed to know, whether it's because the teacher gave a term outline, or whether you just go to Ministry of Education website and you check and you get the curriculum. Either way, you have an outline. Either way, you're going to get that understanding of what they need to know. Start with the understanding of what they need to know, so that way you can break down the revision process in chunks. Yeah? Oftentimes, ineffective revision is connected to cramming, what we call cramming, which means you're waiting last minute to try to revise everything. So effective revision, quick tip, make sure you establish what the child needs to know. You split that to make sure we're breaking it in chunks in order to revise. And then when we combine it with what we talked about earlier in this session, which is dedicated space, talking through work with parents, having check-ins, that kind of thing, those simple steps make a huge difference. A lot of times we look for the most complicated or the fanciest answers, but oftentimes it's study and revision. It is the simple, consistent routines that make a huge difference. So I really want to encourage you to think about that. And the third question asks, how do I get my child to speak up about matters? And the quick tip about that is, let communication be a consistent, open experience. When, as a parent, you stay in communication with your kids, you don't just ask them to share their life, but you share portions of your life as well. And you encourage open and honest communication, not because there's a problem, but because that's just how you communicate. What happens is that when it matters, they do come to you, they do open up. So I would encourage you, let open communication be part of your lifestyle, and that makes it a lot easier. So I really hope that this session really helped with just your understanding of a very practical approach to how you could help your kids transition, whether they're transitioning into Form 1, whether they're getting ready for Form 4. I hope these tips really helped. Of course, if there's any other way that VLC can help, feel free to reach out. The literacy center at gmail.com is our email. You can get us on WhatsApp at 3308341 or 3681505. Reach out, especially if your kids need individual support. That's a big deal for us at VLC, really providing hands-on individualized support. But we're happy to have been here today talking about transitions. We trust that it was a good, encouraging point for you. Of course, don't forget to leave whatever your thoughts are in the comments, so we'll have more feedback from you. And especially leave in the comment section, is there anything else you want to hear us talk about or learn about? So that way we can make it happen. Yeah. So until next time, guys, take care. Have a great one and happy beginning of the new school year. Okay. Bye, guys.